Hello, divine, messy humans. I hope you're all traveling well. I know for me, sometimes life feels more messy than divine, but reconnecting to that divine honestly just gives me a sense of groundedness, peace, and a feeling that things aren't as crazy as my brain, as my trauma patterning, as my past is telling me that it is. How do I do that? I connect in through nature. I spend probably an hour and a half to 2 hours every day walking my dog on the beach, and that is my absolute sanity saver. In addition to that, I concentrate on my breathing. I've actually begun doing some chanting and anything really that's going to properly connect me into my body and bring me into presence. And what does that help me do in terms of connecting to the divine? When I'm fully present in my body, I can feel those Clair senses. What are your Clair senses? They're your psychic senses. They are your divine knowing, your gifts that are there so that you can not just read the physical world, but also the guidance world, the divine world, which we are connected to. As much as I like to prioritize life in the human body that we've chosen, we also have this beautiful connection to God Source. So what are those Clair senses? They are clairvoyance, clairaudience, claircognizance, clairsentience, clairsalience, and clairgustance. And what do they mean? Well, clairvoyance is the one that most people have heard about, and that is our clear seeing. It means that we are gaining messages through our sense of sight that are meaningful for us, that are guiding us, that are signposts and ways that we can navigate through the world of symbol. Our clairvoyance might come in ways of seeing number repetitions. A lot of people talk about the number 1111 or seeing 222, 333, 444, etc. For me, I never really looked at what those numbers meant. What I would see is that number repetition and go, oh, okay, I'm being guided. I'm on the right path. Or I would then wait and see what I felt in my body was the next right step for me to do. Especially when I was going through divorce, I would see those numbers almost every time I looked at the clock. It was crazy. I've never had it in such intensity before. Clairvoyance can also be seeing signs such as a bus drive past and something catches your eye on the side of it, or seeing feathers, dragonflies, bees, some other form of animal. And that is your subconscious drawing your attention to these things. Feathers were always a big one for me. I remember when I met my partner, it was full on the way I felt straight away, and it was a bit strange. And I had asked my team to send me a sign, and I'd asked for a black and white feather. Now, my spirit team and I had been working together for quite some time at this point, and what I found was within 6 meters, first I came across a white feather, then about 2 to 3 meters later, I came across a black feather, and then about the same distance, I came across a black and white feather. And I just started laughing. It was like, do you want a black and a white feather? Or do you want a black and white feather? Anyway, it really tickled my fancy. It made me giggle. I thought it was a really beautiful way that my spirit team do tend to play with me, because I know my intuition. And sometimes they send me signs like that to go, are you really distrusting those feelings you're getting? It's quite amusing. The other thing the other day I'd asked for was to see dolphins out in the bay. I often ask for those as my sign. And I kid you not, we hadn't seen them for probably 3 or 4 months. And I think within 2 weeks of me asking that question, I must have seen 4 big pods over the course of that 2 weeks, doing their fishing and seeing the birds diving in and grabbing the fish. And it was just amazing, and a real confirmation for me that I am on the right path, that the questions I was asking had answers that were aligned with my way of thinking. So clairvoyance is using the power of eyes. Now, another way that you can do that, like I mentioned, is if you see, say, dragonflies or bees or butterflies. They are symbols of transformation and change and community and all of these other different aspects. And when we see them, the reason it makes it a sign and not just another bee or dragonfly is that we notice it and we're like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen one of those in ages. Okay, now's our time to go, all right, what was I asking for signs on? The thing with clairvoyance that can happen is that we will ask to see a sign and then we forget to look for it. So when you do ask for signs, make sure you also remember to look for them. The next sense that I tend to talk about is clairaudience. That is clear hearing. And that is receiving messages through your sense of sound from the spirit world. Now, that can be simple things like walking past a conversation on the street and your ears prick up. And it's amazing to go, oh my God, that just answered my question, or that reminds me of this, or there's some symbol and message in that for you. The other one that a lot of people talk about is turning on the radio and having a certain song or a certain set of lyrics or something said that really draws us in and goes, oh my goodness, that message is meant for me. So clairaudience. The other one with clairaudience is what I get in my ear. I get it just behind my right ear. And it's a voice that sounds very similar to my voice, so I questioned it at the time. But I can't make my thoughts go to that part of my head. It's like there's a little chip or something in there. That's the area where I get my clairaudience to come in. It felt crazy when I first realized it. If I'm thinking in my front brain, in my thinking brain, it tends to be fear-based. It tends to be making stories. It tends to be what ifs. It tends to be living in the future or living in the past. The messages that I get from this little area behind my right ear are firm and loving. And that's the difference between us thinking and going through our more egoic self than tuning into those divine senses that connect us to something bigger than ourselves. So clairaudience can be a beautiful one to use. Sometimes it might be that you hear a certain sound on the street or that you get a ringing in your ears. Now, I remember going to my mentor when I very first started kinesiology. Maybe I was about a year in or something. And I said to her, I think I've got tinnitus. I've got a bit of a problem with this buzzing in my ears. She said, is it always the same ear? I said, no, it changes. Well, is it always the same pitch and frequency? No, it changes. And she said, often that is how we get downloads from our spirit team. So that was quite amusing. Now I actually change the volume. So it used to come in and it would really hurt. What it was saying is pay attention. Something is going to come through your ears that you need to hear. And then I would tune in to say what a client was saying or what a friend was saying. And it would give me greater insight into what was going on, or I would be able to then ask questions that would deepen connection. It would guide me in some way. Now, because that ringing and that pitch in my ear would often be so sharp, I had to train my spirit team. I imagined a volume knob and I'd say, okay, 10 is only for emergencies. Usually 5 is great. At nighttime, you cannot go over a 3 because we are in control. We are the ones living this human existence. They don't understand the way ears work in the same way that we in human bodies do. So again, play with it, practice with it. The next one that I wanted to talk to you about is clairsentience. Clairsentience, I used to think was my strongest sense. Clairsentience is clear feeling. And that can be the tingles up and down the arms. I just got tingles on my legs talking about it. That always makes me giggle the way that those signs work. Tingles up and down the legs, feelings of butterflies. For me, often, especially in clinic, when I'm working with clients, I can feel, say, a pain in my chest, and I'll ask them about a pain in their chest, and they're going, oh, I forgot to mention that. Or it might be that I feel my back and shoulders are quite tight. So almost as soon as I touch my clients, I can start to feel almost what's going on in their body. When I do that, I do then say, okay, I've felt it. You can have the rest of it back. However, clairsentience is one of those senses that we have to be present, really present in our body for. I have actually realized that I can also feel other people's emotions often, which makes me understand why I was so sensitive as a child and why I'm still quite sensitive to what's going on around me. I would feel other people's anxiety, and I still can do this. I remember when I first started dating my partner, I looked over at him and I said, "Are you okay?" We're driving in the car. He said, "I'm fine. Why do you ask?" I said, I'm feeling anxious, and this anxiety doesn't feel like my normal anxiety, so I'm guessing I'm picking it up from somebody. And I looked in the car next to where he was sitting, and there was this person with an extremely anxious look on their face, and I realized that feeling was there. So I was able to send that back and send it on the way. But the reason I tell you that is I have learned what my emotions feel like, and then I have worked out what is not mine as well. Sometimes they get very confusing. When that happens, I actually say to the universe, can you please take from me what is not mine and hand it back to the person it belongs to, if they are meant to find the tools in this lifetime to deal with it, then help them on their way. If they are not, send them love and blessings. The reason I do that is sometimes I will know who the emotion's coming from or who that energy is coming from, but I don't always want to increase the connection between myself and them, because that's just energetic entanglement. I like going through the third party of the universe, send it through that pure divine third party. And then, as I say, if they are meant to find the tools in this lifetime to deal with it. The reason I say that is not everyone's here to do the work. Not everybody wants to do spiritual development. Not everybody wants to become a better person or understand their insides much better or understand their patterning and conditioning. That's okay. That's where they are at. It is not my job to decide where they're at. So I hand that to the universe. So clairsentience, clear feeling. Like I say, tingles, butterflies, feeling different emotions that don't feel like yours. Any sensations that we viscerally feel in our body through our proprioceptions. And that is, it's kind of my favorite sense. I think it's because the first one I really recognized that I had, and it explains so much for me. However, I mentioned I used to think that it was my strongest sense. However, my claircognizance is my strongest sense. My strongest sense is the clear knowing. That is where a piece of information just feels like it's being dropped in a mail slot in my head, and I just know it. I don't know how I know it. I have no reason to know it, but I know it. And usually when I check it, it is correct. Or if I ask the question that's been dropped in my head to my client, there will be a big shift that happens. Or I'll get an inkling that these are the specific words to use, and I will muscle test or I will use them with the client. And you can see all these pieces fitting together for them. So claircognizance is my strongest sense. And you know what? It actually pisses me off, because I've always been told that I'm too sensitive. I'm, woo-woo out there. I remember once my mother said, there's one in every family and you're it, because I'm apparently the hippie strange one. I always thought that clairsentience, the clear feeling, the over-emotional, so to speak, feeling, which I don't believe is a thing actually. I think everyone is emotional, and I don't think there's such a thing as being overly emotional. I think there's such a thing as feeling your emotions unresourcefully and spewing them over other people. But again, even that is the most resourceful you can usually do in one time. But the reason claircognizance annoyed me is because I didn't know how I knew. And so it took me a while to realize is I would use my clairsentience to back up my claircognizance and to more physically prove that what I knew was actually correct and backed up by something. I would use my clairsentience, then I would use my clairvoyance, and then I would use my clairaudience to back up those senses. So it's really strange. I hadn't really put claircognizance into my equation until I'd been working with the other senses for a while. And the reason was the more physical ones felt more definite to me because I had a response rather than just a knowing. The last two, I know one of my teachers groups them together into clairgustance and clairsalience. Clairgustance is clear taste and clairsalience is clear smell. And depending on how people use them, depends on, I guess, their own experience. So for me, clairsalience is that clear smell. I might get a whiff of coffee beans even when nobody's around and I know that's my grandmother. And it might be a whiff of somebody's perfume or tobacco smoke or a pipe, something like that was really specific to the person that you're thinking of or is around. So clairsalience is clear smell and clairgustance is clear taste. So that might be that you get a taste of somebody's favorite food, or you get a strange taste in your mouth, or there'll be something that you can physically taste. So they're the clair senses, and a little bit of how I use them. I know when I was working with my psychic and mediumship mentor, I could taste almost a brandy or a whiskey. I'm actually really not good at those brown liqueurs. It was something like that. And when I mentioned that to them, they went, "Oh, you've got my grandfather." I could see the way he was sitting. I described that, but then I could actually taste the brown liquid going down my throat. There's a beautiful way to play with these to develop them. Now, every single person has these psychic senses. Every single person has these intuitive senses. Whatever you want to call them, they are the same thing. The people who use them more tend to be more honed with them. When we don't know that we have them, they're like atrophied muscles. We can't go into the gym hoping to be Arnie and start lifting the same weights that he was lifting when he was at his prime. I probably couldn't even lift the weights he lifts now that he's a bit older and not so in his prime. No offense, Arnie. I'm sure you're still amazing at what you're doing. But we need to work up to it. We need to build those skills. And the way we build those skills is practicing. We ask for signs. We pay attention. We stay present in the body when we are doing the work that we want to do and asking the questions that we want to ask. And then the guidance comes in. But as I mentioned earlier, we need to stop and listen for that guidance, or feel for that guidance, or look for that guidance, whichever sense we're using. Because if we're not remembering to pay attention to the signs that we've asked for, guess what? We're going to miss them. So I hope this gives you a bit of an idea about all of the clair senses. The reason that those help me to get back into that sense of touch with the divine is I really do feel that divine support. It feels like I'm not alone in those moments that I feel quite alone in this world. And I'm not saying I'm lonely, by the way, but there are times when you're on this spiritual path that you know you're forging a new path. There is no clear way ahead. And those moments you can feel like you're looking around and there's nobody there. Those moments are when I reach for the divine. Let me know which are your strongest senses. Let me know how you use them. Do you practice with them, or is this just something that you take for granted? I am sending you so much love. Remember that we are all connected to the divine. We are all messy. And as we can love and accept our divinity and our messiness, our human experience becomes so much more magical. Sending you love.